Hey everyone, welcome to A Mess Nonetheless. I am Rachel.
And I'm Melissa, and we are sisters. You are so nice.
What?
So just about to start. So I've been sniffly. I don't really have a cold, but I've been a little sniffly, which happens sometimes when it starts getting cold outside. And as we're about to hit record, Rachel's like, don't sniff so much this time. And then I was like, no, all I have to do is sniff. And I started laughing.
I had to edit out like 30 to 50 of her sniffs last time, and they're just these tiny little things. It's like, okay, try not to sniff so much.
So welcome. I'll just do one big one. There we go.
My goodness, that is so funny. Well, we are just a couple weeks from Christmas. At the recording or release of this, my daughter Amber is married. I am certain we had a fabulous time.
Yes, we did.
But we are recording it before her wedding. So, yeah.
So now we're just in anticipation as we're recording. We're just so
Exactly. And we are 1 week from Melissa's birthday.
That's right. I didn't even think about that.
It's hard to be excited about it when it really isn't 1 week away.
Yes. Also, it's hard to be excited about it when there's a wedding coming up.
I mean, that's true. Yes, absolutely. Oh, all right. So today we are talking about fear in relationships. And Melissa and I were like chatting a little bit about this, and we, of course, naturally come at this like completely differently because she's like, I don't really think I struggle with that in relationships. I'm like, obviously, because I struggle with it all the time. Whatever we struggle with, it's the opposite. So I'm not talking about legitimately being afraid of somebody. If you are living with somebody that you are literally afraid of,
get help now. Leave now.
Exactly. That is not what we're talking about. We're not talking about you living in fear of someone name calling you or throwing things at you or demeaning you. That is not okay. And please reach out if that is you and you need any sort of guidance. Yeah. We are talking about just the regular kind of like fear, and I will say even intimidation that just lives in relationships and the damage that it can do. And I will go as far as to say, oh my gosh, I will go as far as to say, is that the right way to say that?
I think. Keep going and I'll tell you.
That it destroys relationships. It unravels.
Go as far to say. Is that what you said? I'll go as far to say.
I'll go as far as to say.
Oh yeah, you added an as. I don't think you need. I think you just say, "I'll go as far to say." I don't even know now. You guys tell me.
No, I don't. I think you need the as.
They both sound wrong to me now.
What did you say? Do the face?
I said we've ruined the phrase.
Oh, we've ruined the phrase. Yes.
Okay. Well.
Oh my gosh.
You guys understand where we're going? Where she's going?
So this is what I'm saying is that I believe that it destroys relationships. You might still have that relationship. That does not mean that it will be flourishing. That does not mean it'll be healthy. It does not mean it will be whole or healed. And I know from very, very personal experience that this is true.
So I want you to pause before you keep going, because you clarified that we're not talking about being afraid of. I want you to say what it is that we are talking about. When you talk about being in fear and intimidation, because intimidation sounds terrible, like being afraid, but I know that's not what you mean. So share where you're going with this.
So let's just say, and this is not true, but let's just say that I can't approach Melissa and ever tell her when she hurts my feelings. It goes the other way, but not, she can tell me, but I can't tell her. I can't quote unquote can't. I choose not to because I believe that she will not be like my friend anymore, right? It's like, okay, so I'll just save the relationship by not telling her how I feel. Of course, like I said, that does not happen. Or intimidation, like I won't ask a friend to help me, but I'm happy to help them. But it's because I feel like they will make me feel stupid, right? Like I'm just intimidated by that situation. These are not big fears. They're tiny little fears that just seep in and take over.
So like maybe if you're afraid on the regular that your husband's going to leave you or cheat on you, there's no proof, there's no reason, but that lives in you. Or if you're afraid you're going to be abandoned by friends. Because
some of them are logical and some are not, right? Like some of them would come from experience. Like let's say I can't ask my friend because she makes me feel stupid. That would probably be from experience. But if I'm like afraid my husband's going to leave me all the time and he's given me absolutely no reason, but then I'm clingy and needy and suspicious and jealous, well, that is a non-logical one. No, understandably, spouses leave their spouses, but it's not logical. It's not a logical fear in my marriage because they don't have any reason to feel that way. And so, so I'm talking about all of these and how they creep into our lives and they really determine our decisions, our thought processes.
No. To like correct grammar.
I don't know why I ask you. Of course you don't know.
She really do like proper speaking in English and like writing and things, but not on the spot, not on the fly. Parentheses did go through my mind before you said it, so I don't know that that's right, but
oh my gosh, that's so funny. So our thought processes are we're so stupid today. Yep. We're like extra stupid.
We are. High five.
Oh my gosh. Okay. They're all affected by when we allow these kinds of fears to creep in. So I can and will give some examples, but I want to start with like, what's the problem? Like, what is the problem with having this fear and allowing it to enter in and exist and thrive in relationships?
Dictate. Yeah.
What did you say?
And dictate. Like
dictate. Yeah.
Reactions and our.
And that is one of the problems is it does dictate. And now we're not making good and faithful and
rash
Holy Spirit-based rash decisions. We are allowing something ridiculous to dictate. Yes. So the problem with fear in general is the Bible says literally 365 times, do not fear. Like, do not be afraid.
Every day of the year.
Yeah, exactly. And there's an extra one on leap year. Yeah. So, no. We're short one on leap year.
You just pull one out from the rest of the year.
Because on leap year, there's 366. Yeah. Yes. Okay.
I was like, wait, is there only 364 days in a year?
I know. I'm, like I said, extra stupid. So obviously, this is important to God, that fear is not something that we entertain and live with and allow, to just take up residence in our lives. Clearly, we are not going to say 365 verses right now. But I will pull out a few because it is helpful, to have some. So Isaiah 41:10, fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. Psalm 34:4, I sought the Lord and he answered me and delivered me from my fears. Oh, I love that verse.
2 Timothy.
Go ahead.
Yeah. 2 Timothy
she's got the notes today, guys.
For God gave us spirit, not of fear, but of power and love and self-control. I think that one's super powerful.
Fear.
And John 14 says, peace I leave with you. My peace I give to you. Not as the world gives, do I give to you. Let not your hearts be troubled. Neither let them be. I don't have my reading glasses on. I shouldn't have offered to read because I'm struggling to focus on words. So John 14 is really beautiful and you should go read it.
Should I say it? Peace I leave with you. My peace I give to you. Peace, by the way, is the opposite of fear, right? Not as the world gives, do I give. Let not your hearts be troubled. Neither let them be afraid. And that is Jesus saying, I don't want you to be afraid. I choose peace. I bring peace. What were you going to say?
Well, my birthday is in sometime soon and I'm going to be 46. And apparently in your mid 40s, your eyes go from, like my son was like, you've always had bad eyes because I have terrible eyes. Like I have terrible eyesight. But my contacts or glasses make it fine. And now they've gone into overdrive of bad. And now I can't even read without extra glasses on top of my glasses and contacts. And so I'm like, I can't focus on what I'm looking at.
They've gone into overdrive. Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
In high school or middle school, they have kids like put on goggles to like imitate being drunk, like so they can feel. That's what my eyes feel like almost all the time when I read.
Oh my gosh, that's terrible. So where there is fear, there is not faith.
And there's not peace.
And there is no peace. And these are things that we are called to pursue. We are called to receive.
Well, they're literally why Jesus came and died for us, so that we could have freedom and peace and no fear.
Exactly. So relationships cannot flourish like under the suspicion of fear. So I'm going to share what I mean about this. So some time ago, my oldest son and his fiance at the time had a baby unexpectedly. and ended up moving into our basement. We had like an apartment, and they lived there. And it was, you know, a really, really bad time in his life. He was really struggling. And so my laundry room was down there, and they were supposed to go to work during the day, and I was supposed to have free reign to do my laundry. And I just was like, I just won't do it in the evenings or really on the weekends. Like, I was like, I can be considerate of that. Well, he ended up losing his job. And because it was such a bad season in his life, he just sat on the couch for a couple months. He's not proud of that season by any means. And he doesn't listen, but even if he did, I don't think I'm saying anything he would mind, because he would be like, yeah, I was terrible that time. Like, and he would just play video games all day. And I would go down there and the middle of the day, and he seemed so annoyed at me every time. Like, he either barely acknowledged me or acted annoyed at me. And one time I actually heard him go, "Hey," and I was like, oh, and realized he was on the phone. Like, I had not really heard him be kind to me. He wasn't mean to me. He just wasn't like kind or loving. And I started feeling like a prisoner in my own home. And I hated going down and doing laundry. And I started affecting my relationship with him. And the problem really wasn't him. Don't get me wrong. It would have been ideal if he had just been easier in that season. Yeah. The problem was that I allowed fear and intimidation of, really, I mean, I wasn't afraid of him, but
his lack of reaction or his
yes, like, he hates me, like, you know, he wishes I didn't live here in my own house, you know, all these things drive me, and it was ruining my relationship with him. And then it was like hurting my relationship with my daughter-in-law to be, and it was causing me angst and Joey angst. And our aunt Liz just really encouraged me, every single time you need to go downstairs, you stop and you pray away the spirit of intimidation, because it's like Satan has just allowed this spirit to just like thrive in your basement. And it felt very dark and depressive when I went down there. Don't get me wrong, it was basement, so it was literally dark, but there was just this heaviness in the basement. And I feel like Satan was just like living his best life there. And of course he would want my relationship with my son to be ruined. Why wouldn't he? And my son now, I mean, 7 years later, I mean, goes to church, is in a life group, like goes to men's things, like talks to me about things in the Bible, and like, it's amazing. And like, if we had ruined our relationship, I don't believe that those things would be happening now, not because I am responsible for his faith, but because it has been through our relationship that God has brought him back to him.
Right.
And so, she was just like, you have to pray that away and pray in things like courage and connection and grace and compassion and understanding. And I just didn't want to have a hard conversation with him and say, it hurts my feelings. Like, could you just be nice to me? Like, I let you live here. Could you, like, I've given you a third of my house. Could you please just be nice to me? And I just didn't even like have the courage to have that conversation. And eventually we did. And he was like, I just feel so depressed. Like, I'm not mad at you. And I was like, but you seem really mad at me. And he's like, why would I be mad at you? And I'm like, I don't know. And this is the problem with assuming and living under this like suspicion or, you know, a fear or intimidation is Melissa's telling someone.
I have a child in the room who is like, wants to like get water, but everything that they do in the kitchen, we can hear.
Oh, it's super loud.
So I'm going to just mute quick and
yell at him. I'll just keep sharing. So everything was so much better when I was willing to like open up and have this difficult conversation. And then one time, Melissa, I shared with her that she has this face when she's confused. I think we talked about this on this podcast, and Melissa's confused face looks like, I hate you, you idiot.
I am muted so that my child can get water, and I am laughing really hard behind mute.
She has no control over what her face looks like. She can't help it. But I was like,
hard, but I don't.
Well, and it was like, the reason it came up was because she was struggling with one of her kids, and I was like, I see that this face is a big part of the problem. And I was like, I'm just going to tell you, because
change your face.
I know. She was like, I can't change my face. I was like, I know. But like, you can at least acknowledge, hey, like, she'll say that, like, if I look confused, or if I look mad, I'm sorry, I'm just confused, or I'm processing or whatever. And it makes a big difference. But I had to be willing to have that conversation with her. Otherwise, I would have always struggled mentally with like, is she mad at me? Does she think I'm stupid? And then that builds up.
And lies build on top of it, because now you
Right.
have this baseline of something that isn't even real, because never
Right.
once was I thinking anything about her being stupid. I
Except the
apparently,
times I really am being stupid. Then
but
you
then
just
I'm just
say
like
it.
being stupid.
Yeah, you just use your words.
Yeah. I don't give you faces. I'm way more aggressive than I'm not passive aggressive. I'm just gonna say
Yeah.
it. So what happens when we assume something, when we
Yeah.
assume someone's thinking or feeling something that is negative, or in any way not helping us with our thought
Right.
process, we're going to build lies on top of that. We're going to allow other things to build on it that aren't even necessarily real. And now we have this
Right.
whole narrative in our head about how someone feels about us or what our relationship is like, when really based on assumption. And that's what you were
Right.
assuming, that Randy was mad at you. You were,
Right.
instead of letting, because the fear was not in the way, you would have said, what is going on? You do not seem okay. You
Right.
seem, and he could have been like you said, I am just so depressed. I can't even
Mm-hmm.
come up with a smile. It has, because you took something on that had nothing to do with you, and it
Mm-hmm.
became very real, and
Right.
literally, like you said, could have changed the rest of your relationship with him. And
Right.
Mhm.
Right. Absolutely. And that's literally our last point, is assumptions will let fear thrive.
Mhm.
So it's like, assumptions are, I mean, what do they say? Assuming is making an ass out of you and me.
It's true.
It's not just,
Yeah.
it doesn't just hurt us, it hurts the whole relationship dynamic.
Yeah.
And I like just have learned so much to be like, can I just ask a clarifying question? Like,
Yeah.
let's say you say something that feels hurtful to me, or vice versa. This literally happened just a couple weeks ago. You're like, do you really mean it exactly how you said that? Because if so, that's really hurtful. I was like, well, no. It was so ridiculous. I was like, yes, I mean it exactly like that, but not in reality,
Because
only
this is
in
really
my
truthful. Yeah.
only in my feelings. She's like, okay, well, your feelings are stupid, so I'll let it go. But like, if you actually believe that's true, I'm like, no. And it's like, versus if she like didn't ask that clarifying question, she could have just internalized it. And like, there's now this wedge between us.
It would have started to change our relationship, because everything she said that had anything to even remotely do with that one statement
Yeah.
that I internalized as real, I
Mm-hmm.
would have started building this whole other narrative in my head
Well, you see it
about
all
who
through that filter.
it's all, yeah, exactly. And it would have, and it would have changed everything. Whereas this way, I didn't like it. I didn't like what she said. But when she was like, no, I don't really mean it, I feel that way. So it feels true, but I know it's not true. I'm like, well, I
Right.
get that. I can totally understand how that happens. But
Well, and
also,
then that's where grace comes in.
yeah.
It's like fear is out and grace is in, and
Yeah.
compassion and understanding and empathy and all of that.
And for the record, I need you guys to know, if you're listening and being like, well, good for you that you guys can speak that clearly with each other. This did not come naturally.
Right.
We went through years of not being able to speak this frankly with each other.
Mhm.
It did destroy our relationship. If you have not been listening to our whole podcast, if you don't know, Rachel and I went through a year to a year and a half where we barely talked, because we had all of this baggage that exploded in our face, and we had to really kind of reset, both of us, with God, and start to rebuild. And it had to be so intentional. And one of the things we said to each other as we started to rebuild is, we have to be able to say in the moment, when you say or do or look like that hurts me, I need to clarify if you meant that. So that was an agreement that we came to, but that was not just, we weren't just born with that ability to be so amazing with each other. Like, we fought tooth and nail. And really, it would have been very easy for us to have just ended our relationship. I don't mean easy, like it would have almost been easier to have ended our relationship than to keep fighting for it. So,
absolutely.
If you're thinking, well, good for you guys, I don't have that, know that this has been fought for. And also, if you're in that place, fight for it. Like, it is, if it is somebody you know is worth, like, you know that they're not hurting you, they're not abusing you, you just somehow have gotten your wires crossed and things aren't running smoothly, fight for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really glad that you clarified that, because it would be easy to be like, well, how great for you. And it is great for us. Now, yes. Well, and I will say, like, I have a similar relationship with one of my sisters-in-law, where like we let things build up, and it all came to a head, and we agreed we would bring things to one another. And for the most part, in the last, I remember her bringing something to me when I found out I was pregnant with Eland, and that was like, he just turned 6, so almost 7 years ago. And it went very well, right? So we started, probably in the last 8 years, we started doing that. Well, in the last 6 months, we had a situation where it kind of blew up, and it got bigger than it needed to be, and it didn't need to be like that at all.
Mm-hmm.
And so just because we've learned to get it right doesn't mean
Mm-hmm.
it's perfect, but we
No.
kept fighting through it. Like we were
Yeah.
like, okay, what's happening here? Because we've done so well. Like,
Right.
and we got through it. We
Yeah.
had the uncomfortable conversations.
Mm-hmm.
We said the things that were like, I feel like you're not listening to me, or, you know, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and moved forward. Because otherwise, if we had not moved past that, I would be right where I was easily with history
Mm-hmm.
8 years ago, where it's
Right.
like, oh, and then there's she always does this and she never, you know, this.
Yeah.
And it's like,
Yeah.
that's not healthy.
No.
That's not healthy at all. We've already talked about that. I use those terms all the time and they're terrible.
So always use those terms, and I should never use those terms.
That's what Dad said. He goes, I was laughing so hard because you said something like I always use the term always, or I never, like, basically I threw them together and he was like, oh my gosh. And I was like, well, I am working on it. I correct myself a lot.
Yeah.
Mostly when I'm like, oh my gosh, that's not even fair. Right.
Yeah.
But I still am trying to correct myself even when it is fair.
Yeah.
You know, like when you say to your teenager, you never take out the garbage without being told 3 times. And you're like, that is a verifiable fact.
Exactly.
No, it's not. I actually do believe that sometimes he does take it out, but it's like 1% of the time. So anyways, yeah. So this fear, you know, recently I had, in the last 2 years, I had a very, very, very close relationship with me that I basically let die, or was totally willing to let it go.
Mm-hmm.
Because, well, there was obviously a million factors into it, and certainly it was two-sided, and
Mm-hmm.
this other person would very much agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
But what I realized is that my main issue in the relationship was fear.
Mm-hmm.
Because I started feeling like this person was pushing me away or pulling away and didn't want to be my friend anymore. And instead of me handling things in general like I generally do, it's like fear drove me crazy, and I like became a different version of myself. And honestly,
Mm-hmm.
I think Mom would be okay with me saying, like, when she found out we were moving here, she wasn't her true self to me in our relationship for a long time.
Yeah.
She, you know, she was like this one person with everyone. And then for a couple years, she was like a
Because she was
different
so
version
afraid
of
of
me.
what it was going to mean. I mean,
Yeah.
she was afraid of what it was going to mean for you to move across the country.
Exactly. And it's like, that's not who she is. And I am
Mhm.
like looking at things in the last year and a half in this relationship going, okay, how I responded there or handled that, like, or even the assumptions I made, literally all these things that we're talking about, I
Mhm.
did them all
Mhm.
wrong.
Mhm.
And as a result, I really feel like that was my biggest thing in the relationship was like, why would you even want to be in a relationship with someone who's kind of became a different person, even though I'm like, was myself to everyone else. And then also kind of was pushing the person away by having my own fears.
Because
all
when
these
we
fears.
respond to things, if we assume something and we're afraid of something and we respond to it out of that without having conversation, we become irrational. And it
Exactly.
is really hard to have any kind of relationship with someone who lives in irrationality. Like,
Yes.
how do you say anything? Everything you say is wrong. Everything you do is wrong because they're responding to you out of this irrational lens of fear, of rejection, fear of failure, fear of losing you, fear of whatever it is that they're afraid of. And yeah, I mean, it true. And it literally can all be in our head. Like that's what's
that's the worst part.
Yes, exactly. And that is why it is so much better to have the conversation with somebody. Like I have a friend who we've gone through this a few times where she assumes things about me, about my reactions, about my faces, about whatever. And instead of just asking me about it, it will sit in her for months, weeks, years, sometimes even. And then it comes out and I'm like, what? No, that was not even at all what I was thinking or feeling or anything. But because she didn't talk to me, now she's getting better at it. She's learned. I have said to her, you have got to say it right away. Like, please don't be afraid to say it right away. Like, even if I don't respond perfectly, because I am a human being who doesn't always respond perfectly, it's going to be so much better for us long term.
Right.
Because even if we fight in that moment, at least the fight will get over and we can move on without all these assumptions and things, reactions, irrationalities building up in your head.
Right.
So, yeah. Oh, Rachel's got a cough. As I stopped talking, she started coughing.
We've got kids making noise. So our last point is fear pushes others away. And I really want to talk about this specifically to parents. Because what happens is if you have not gotten to that season of having teenagers or adult children, this is where I learned real quick when I started adopting teenagers and then they became adult children, I learned really quick how absolutely devastating a relationship is, or it is to a relationship when we allow fear to rule. It will push people away.
Yep.
And so if you are like in that season of having a teenager and hey, they don't always want to hang out with you, or they're annoyed at you, or it's like they act annoyed every time you ask for a hug or whatever. If that's happening and you just become more and more needy, you're pushing them away.
Literally
and
building a wall.
Yeah, this was happening with Joey and our daughter Ada. Like she needs hugs from me all the time and she always wants my comfort and support, but I like almost never like reach out for it. Or I ask like, yeah, I let her come to me. I'm like, or do you want me to lay on your bed? Do you want me to give you a hug? Whereas like he was like, well, where did my little girl go? And he was like invading her space and her life and her boundaries. And she was like, kind of hated him for a while. And he's like, he hates me. And I'm like, well, first of all, I would as well. Treating me. Please don't ever do that to me. But also I was like, honey, this is the phase. Like, she doesn't hate you. She is going to remember at some point that you hang the moon, that you are literally the best dad. She could never have asked for a better dad, but you got to give her space. And if you allow fear
of forgetting
to enter in, it's going to take so much longer to get back to that season.
And that's literally created teenagers to start to pull away from us. They have to do that in order to get up the ability and the bravery and the courage to leave us, because that is what they're supposed to do.
And to take authority and ownership over their own adult lives.
Exactly. Yeah. Because if we literally parent them up and like literally parent them like they're toddlers until they leave the house, how are they ever going to make it on their own? So it's so natural. And we take it it can be easy as parents to take it personally, but it's not about us. And it is so normal. And I'm not saying it doesn't hurt, even if you know it's normal. And like I have 4 teenagers right now. Like I am very aware of all of the withdrawing and the pulling away. And this is why I stay up late a lot at night, guys, because if I sit in my living room past 10:30 or 11, somebody or somebody's are going to come and sit and talk to me.
Somebody's.
Sometimes it's 1, sometimes it's 2 or 3, or just come and hang out in front of me. And like suddenly they're happy and cheerful instead of acting like I annoy them. And it is painful that I don't hardly get anything from them, but it's not about me. And if I pushed in on them because I was afraid of them pulling away, they would never talk to me. I mean,
it's true. Well, and what is the deal with teenagers and being like, it's 11 p.m. I'm awake. They're like newborns. What did you say?
At 11 o'clock, they're like, now I'm happy and cheerful and want to talk to you.
Right. Brighton's always coming in my room. I'm like asleep. And he's like, hey, Ma. Hey, want to hang out, Ma? And he like lays on my bed and he gets like in my space and he'll snuggle. And I'm like, he'd be so mad if he ever heard this. I mean, but by the time he ever will, he won't care by then.
No, because he'll never listen to this.
And that too. But like literally he's just like, hey, Ma, what are you doing? Hey, Ma. And it's like, sorry, you are not the same person. I don't know if Ada will ever go through that because the girlfriend needs to be asleep by 8:30. She has always needed so much sleep.
She won't ever.
Yeah.
She's also not a morning person.
Nope. She's also really not an afternoon person. She just needs sleep all the time.
Yeah.
I'm like, I just need to re-examine the medical part. Is there a medical reason? She's like, Mom, I'm too tired all the time.
Okay, so you guys, my oldest son Tate became, I mean, he was 6 foot probably in 9th grade. I mean, he was
became
very
a giant by like 4.
Yeah, and he slept all the time. And since he has stopped growing, he does not need the same amount of sleep. And Ada is the same way. She is very tall, and she has grown very fast. I mean, what is she, 12? And she's like as tall as you. I mean, that's really tall for a girl at that age. And so I think that once she stops growing, she won't be so tired anymore.
That's what I am hoping for.
So
overdrive. Right. So we were talking about teenagers, but like if you have adult children or even grandchildren, like I mean, if you have grandchildren, you probably have adult children too, but both of these would work. Like if your grandchildren sense that like let's say they snub you one day or whatever, and they sense that like, oh, grandma's mad because it's like, it's not going to pull them in, right? Just give them their space. Be like, well, I'm here when you're ready.
Yeah.
And like your adult children, if you're afraid that they're going to like ruin their life with their decisions and you put this into the relationship.
Yeah.
What did you say?
Like you put that fear of what they're doing with their life on them.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's going to ruin
It's not going to help them, and it's not going to help your relationship.
No.
Like at all. And so that's, I mean, the fear and intimidation and like, it's all
and assumptions. Yeah.
So
all of it.
detrimental. So, and I think that's why the Bible talks about it so much is
agreed.
It's so, So our challenge today is, where are you letting fear in your relationships? Like, where are you letting them into them? Where are you letting them thrive? Maybe I'm hoping that whether you thought you had fear in relationships or not, coming into this podcast, that I use an example, or Melissa used an example, that you were like, oh, I do that. And I hope that you will take that to God and examine it and look up the Bible verses and start meditating on them and just take an action step to move away from that in, one or all of your relationships. So, so
it brings a lot of freedom. When you can let go of that, because you guys aren't going to agree as your kids are getting old, especially from a parent to a child perspective. You're not going to agree with a lot of the things your kids do, and maybe for the rest of their life, like depending on what path they live on. And Rachel talks about, she's very honest about the ways that she wasn't great with her kids, but what she hasn't said is that God got a hold of her and was like, knock it off, you're going to lose them. And she really, I mean, she has some kids who don't make great decisions, and she just loves them so well, and she lets. They can call her when they're drunk. They can call her when they're high, and she just loves on them.
They call me from jail.
Yep, they call her from jail, and she doesn't say, "Well, you did it again." See, I told you. I'm nothing like that. It is always, of course, her heart grieves. That's not how she wants them to live. But she is approachable. She is reachable. She is, and when they call her in this state, she just loves them really well, and never ever says, "I told you so," like ever.
Thank you,
because they would never call her again. And and so
thank you.
I mean, she literally, when she's saying, don't be careful how you talk to your adult children, she's speaking from experience. And, and I've watched it change.
I want to share, speaking of that, we were going to wrap up, but I do want to share. So my daughter, Amber, that, just got married, her and her fiance, Willie, have been together like 6 or 7 years. So when we met Willie, Amber didn't tell us what he did, like, on purpose. It was like she didn't lie. She just didn't tell us.
And then when we found
and then like when we found out, she was like, well, he's a hash grower. Like, he grows weed, like in Oregon. And this was like 7 years ago, and it was legal there, but like very few places. I don't think it was legal like anywhere else. And, she was kind of like, I don't know how you feel about that. And it's like, well, is that who you want your daughter to date? Like, is that what you want him to do? Like, no, I mean, really, most people would say, no, I would prefer that not to be his job.
Yes.
But what were we going to do? Be like, you need to break up with him? Or like, of course not. Like, we just loved him and accepted him. And recently, he doesn't do that anymore. He's got like a really upstanding business that doesn't have anything to do with marijuana. And, and they make such great decisions, and we're just so proud of them. But I just think back and how different our relationship would be if it had started very tumultuous with us being afraid of her dating someone in that position. And recently she was like, oh, Mom, we've started like growing again, and I can't wait to show you what we're growing. And I was like, oh, okay. I guess they're back to growing weed. And she sends me a video, and it's like tomatoes and lettuce. I was like, oh my gosh, she's so grown up. And I'm like, Willie just never felt, even then, Amber was like, well, I don't want to tell grandma what he does. She didn't want to tell aunts and uncles. And I was like, if they ask, just tell him. It's like, these people should not and will not like turn their back on you because of what he does.
I don't think any of us said anything other than, it's probably a really lucrative business. Good for you.
That's what everybody said. Oh, you probably make a lot of money doing that. Right. And it's like, we just have the best relationship. And it came from, with Willie, our son-in-law, and it came from, well, we can't decide
what he dictate your interaction with him.
Exactly. Not letting that fear. Exactly. So, well, we are definitely like using up all our time here. So, but I was like, what? It's a great example. So, if you haven't rated us, please do. I saw we have a bunch of ratings now on Spotify because we only had them on Apple Podcasts. So thank you guys. And thank you for giving us 5 stars, and please keep doing it. If you haven't done it,
might
please
feel that your life is a mess.
Thank you.
But don't feel bad.
Bye.
Ours is too, but we own a microphone and we have no shame. That's why we'll talk about how our life is a mess nonetheless. That's the name of our podcast.